Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Leadership Project Live. Today's topic is going to be about leading with empathy. Make sure you stick around to the end, where I'm going to be giving you some really positive tips about traps that you can avoid, some things that you should not do if you want to be able to lead with empathy. And these are common mistakes that many of us make. Stick around, enjoy the show. So welcome back to the Leadership Project Live. Today's topic, leading with empathy, and the importance of empathy in our leadership, in showing our team that we care for them, that we're there for them. Everyone wants to be seen, heard, and valued. Everyone wants to feel that they matter. The best technique that we have for this is to demonstrate empathy in our leadership. Stay tuned to the end, because I'm going to unpack all of this. I'm going to unpack 3 types of empathy that you need to be aware of as a leader. And I'm going to unpack some of the common mistakes that leaders make with empathy, where they go too far, in fact, and what that can have as a negative impact on our team and on our leadership. Now, before we get started, I've got a few announcements. So How to Lead with Empathy is today's show. On the Leadership Project this week, we've had some amazing guests. We've had Dermot Crowley, who shared with us a lot about how to work smarter, not harder, how to lead smarter, and how to get better results through some amazing productivity tips. Dermot is one of Australia's leading productivity experts, and there's so many nuggets of gold in this interview. So I strongly encourage you to catch this. We're also joined by Holly Smith, and Holly shared with us what it takes to create your best life, to take control of your life. A lot of things around habits and productivity as well. So productivity was a huge theme on the show this week. Now, on to today's content, leading with empathy. And make sure you do stay tuned to the end so that you can hear the practical tips on things that you can avoid when you're looking to lead with empathy. We're going to go through why it's important. We're going to go through emotional intelligence and a little bit of background there, where empathy comes in with our emotional intelligence, the 3 types of empathy, and then I'm going to give you those practical tips on things that you can avoid. As always, if you've got some questions or comments that you would like to make about the things that we're talking about today, please go ahead and put those in the comments. If you're watching there live, and I can see many of you have joined already, if you're watching live, you can post your question or comment now, and I'll share it during the show. If you're watching this show after it's already been recorded, go ahead and put that question or comment in the comments, because we do track that, and we'll come back and we'll give you an answer or reflect on your comment at a later point. So today, all about leading with empathy. Leading with empathy. What does it mean to lead with empathy and to make sure that we feel that our team know that we care about them? I'm going to sum it up here with this great quote from Teddy Roosevelt. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. This is what empathy is all about. Demonstrating to our teams that we've got their back. This is also where trust lives. For someone to trust us, they need to feel that we have their best interest at heart, that we're not self-serving, that we truly care about them as a human being, as an individual, as a team member, that we have their interest at heart in the decisions that we make. So if there's no other reason to embrace this concept of leading with empathy, it's this one. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. When they know that you care for them, this is when they're going to go above and beyond. They're going to knock it out of the park in the comfort that their leader has got their interest at heart. This is all part of the fabric of what we call emotional intelligence. And I'm here to tell you that emotional intelligence is the number 1 predictor of your success in life, as an individual, and as a leader. It's more powerful than anything else. EQ is more important than your IQ. It's your ability to work with other human beings that makes the difference. All businesses and all teams are human businesses. They're people businesses, every single one. I don't care how smart you are in your given field, it's going to be your ability to work with other human beings that makes all the difference as to whether you are successful. So what does all that mean? It's our ability to perceive, use, control our own emotions. It's also our ability to perceive and understand other people's emotions. And it's how we bring it all together in fruitful relationships that are beneficial, mutual beneficial relationships based on respect, based on trust, based on empathy. And this is where we're going to really unpack the emotional intelligence, and today the specific theme around empathy. Very good news for you. Emotional intelligence can be taught. Where IQ and your general aptitude is usually something that's moderately static throughout your life and your career, there are some things that you can do to work on your cognition, but your IQ is generally pretty static. Emotional intelligence is more like a muscle. It can be trained. It can be developed. It can be worked on over time. So this is a worthwhile investment, something that you can work on every single day to build your emotional intelligence. Now, there's 5 focus areas around emotional intelligence, and clearly today, leading with empathy, we'll be focusing on one. But bear with me as I give a little bit of background on the others. So self-awareness. Self-awareness is our ability to tap into our own emotion and to understand it, to be able to notice and name emotion when it comes into our life, to understand what is this emotion, why this emotion now. These are all things around our self-awareness. Self-management or regulation is our ability to regulate those emotions. Now, the word is regulate, not suppress. This is not about suppressing your emotion. It's about regulating your emotion to best outcome. One of my favorite quotes from Aristotle is that anyone can get angry. That is easy. But to get angry with the right person at the right time for the right reason in the right way to the right degree, that is not easy. So it's about emotional regulation, not about suppressing emotion. It's about understanding our emotion and then regulating it for whatever outcome it is that we're trying to achieve at a given moment. Self-management is about having an effective emotional response rather than an instant emotional reaction. And one of my favorite quotes from T.D. Jakes is to never make a permanent decision based on a temporary emotion. This comes down to this whole thought concept of self-management. Self-motivation is the ability to elevate ourselves through those emotions. And Michael Jordan is a classic example of this, to be able to tap into emotion around him to elevate his performance. So this is about using emotion in a way to propel us forward, to motivate us, to make sure that we're managing our stress levels so that we are pushing ourselves with a little bit of stress that maximizes our performance, but not so much stress that we capitulate and we freeze, or we fight, flight, or freeze, that we have some kind of reaction that doesn't serve us well at that moment. So self-motivation, emotion can be a very motivating tool if we use it correctly. The next one is empathy, and that's our topic for today. And this is about our understanding of other people's emotions. And we're going to unpack the 3 types of empathy in today's discussion, and then go a bit deeper on how you use empathy as a leader. And finally is relationships. Relationships is then how we do that with a group, with other human beings. How do we connect? How do we connect with emotion, our emotion, their emotion, the group's emotion, so that we have healthy relationships based on the healthy expression of emotion, the healthy understanding of emotion, the healthy tapping into emotion for virtuous effect. This is the point about relationships. Now, let's dig in. Let's get into this topic about empathy, because a lot of us think about it, but do we know really deeply what empathy means? There's our ability to recognize emotion in others. Our ability to recognize emotion in others. And there's 3 types of empathy that we're going to unpack: cognitive empathy, emotional empathy, and empathic concern, which is most closely associated with compassion. So let's start with cognitive empathy. Cognitive empathy is the ability to understand someone else's perspective, to see the world through their eyes, to see what they're seeing, to understand what they're seeing. And there's the famous quote that if you're struggling to understand someone else, that you should walk a mile in their shoes. And forgive me for a dad joke for a moment here. If you're having this situation where you're not understanding another human being, you should walk a mile in their shoes. That way, if you still don't understand them, you're a mile away and you have their shoes. Okay. It's just a joke. It is important that we put ourselves in their shoes and we start seeing the world through their perspective. And there's all kinds of graphics that we can use for this, but this one's a really good one. This is the 6 versus 9. So if you look at this diagram here, you got one individual that's saying, oh, this is a 6. And the other one saying, no, 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 it's a 9. And if someone else was looking from the side, they might go, hang on a second, that's a G. It's not either of those things. Perspective. What is the other person seeing, and getting to the point where you can understand how they saw that and why they saw that from their perspective, because their perception is very real for them. Now, this doesn't mean that you even have to agree with them. You're just acknowledging it. You're just acknowledging it, saying, okay, all right, now I see what you're seeing. The ability to have that cognitive empathy to see what the other person is seeing. Emotional empathy is then to understand how they feel, seeing the whole of the person, the emotion of the situation, to put yourself in their shoes again, but now from an emotional perspective. If I was in their shoes, what would I be feeling? And why would I be feeling that? This is the ability. And this one takes a lot of practice to get right. And we're going to give you some tips shortly on how to do that and some mistakes to make sure that you avoid. So emotional empathy, understanding how they're feeling, seeing the whole of the person. So if you see something shift in their body language, it might be a signal that they're uncomfortable with something right now. And therefore, we're going to get curious and we're going to explore that. And the final one is what we call empathic concern. This is closely related to compassion, and it relates to our want to help. This is really getting in now to the idea that we might get into the hole next to them and start digging alongside them. It might even go to the point of wanting to solve the problem for them. And I've got some words of caution coming up about that in a few moments. It's the want to do something. This is really similar to a parent's love for a child. You never want to see your child going through tough times. You don't want to see them hurt. You don't want to see them angry. You don't want to see them concerned. So your heart goes out to them and you want to fix it. Now, what are the words of caution here? The most important thing here is that we need to think about what is going to serve this person well. Let me start with, as a leader, some of the areas of concern. If you're an empath, let's call it that, someone that has a lot of empathic concern and is always wanting to solve other people's problems, what happens is a transference. So the other person might feel really good because they've offloaded and downloaded their problems to you, and you've promised to fix those problems for them. But now it's you that's going home with a heavy sack of problems at the end of the day, and you're starting to get weighed down. If you're a team leader with 7 team members and all of them are going through some tough times at the moment, instead of 7 people having some issues, you're going home with 7 people's issues on your back. So you've got to be careful with your own management here around empathic concern. Of course, you want to show empathy. I'm not saying not to do that, but I'm saying that if you take on all of their problems for them, pretty soon it's going to be you that needs help rather than them. And what they learn from this is an element of dependence. They don't have to solve their problems anymore. All they have to do is hand it over to you. That's going to lead nicely into some of the things that we're going to discuss about some of these things that you need to avoid. So this is going to make sense as we build in today's discussion. And I've got a comment here. I've realized that engaging in arguments with others rarely changes their perspective. Super powerful. This is a super powerful thing. An argument doesn't change their perspective. What can change perspectives is the ability to give them a deep listening to. This is where we get into the situation where we do need to seek first to understand, then to be understood. And this is a great tip for anyone in relationships out there, whether it's leader to team member, it might be your loving relationships on the home front. When people are willing to start listening to you is after they feel like you heard them. So if you're in a relationship and you're in one of those arguments and you hear these frightful words, you're just not listening to me. That's the signal that they need to get something off their chest first before they're willing to listen to your perspective. So my golden tip for you, if you get in one of these situations where you got two people talking at each other, talking over each other, one of them needs to take the step of zipping it for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Let the person get everything off their chest. Show them that you heard them, that you understood them. Once again, don't even have to agree, but show them that you understood what they were saying. Then they'll feel seen, then they'll feel heard, then they'll feel like their opinion matters to you. Brendan Bouchard has done some research on this, and he came to a conclusion that once someone has done that, once they've gotten it off their chest and they feel that the other person has heard what they're trying to share, the person is then 83% more likely to start looking for a common ground solution, a reconciliation. But until they've got it off their chest and until they have felt heard, they're not ready to listen. So a great question here. If you're in those arguments where it just people talking at each other and no perspectives are changing, change gears. Go into listening mode first. Let them download. Let them express. Make sure you do some active listening so they feel that you truly heard them and understood them. You can even say at the end of that, is there anything else, to make sure that it's all out? And then you can start putting your perspective back to them once you've understood them. This is easier said than done, because I know it's really hard when someone's expressing something to you and you don't agree. It's very hard to not react and say, no, that's not true. That's not true. You've got to pause. You've got to finish that process first. So hear them. You can say, all right, so what I'm hearing is, and replay back to them some of the things that you've heard. Then they're going to feel seen. They're going to feel understood. Once they've got everything off their chest, they're then going to be ready to listen to you. Got another question here. Many managers or leaders feel that they have to choose between being empathic and preserving their own well-being. What can you say about this? So this is going to go nicely to a really big tip that I've got here today. It's all about balance. And it's all about asking yourself the question, what is going to serve this person well at this moment? It could be, in some circumstances, that the best thing you can do is roll up your sleeves and help them solve their problem. In other cases, it might be that you need to take a step back and let them solve the problem themselves. Because if you solve the problem for them every time, they're going to learn that dependence. If they're to grow their resilience, if they're to grow their own problem-solving skills, if they're to grow their own emotional intelligence, sometimes you just need to be there for them and allow them to go through that process. You're not leaving them to drown at all. You're there for them, and through asking better questions, you can help them to solve their own problem. And when they solve their own problem, that's where they get the greatest learning, and that's when they get the greatest growth. This is an excellent question, and we're going to come back to that again in a moment. We've got another one here. Some leaders may naturally show more empathy than others, potentially creating an advantage for those who are more naturally empathetic. This is a great point as well around fairness and equity. And many of us work in organizations where there are other groups around. Now, you need to be yourself. You need to be your authentic self. So if you're an empathic leader, you should embrace that absolutely. But you do need to make sure that that empathic treatment of people in your team and in your business also has an air of fairness and equity, or you won't be able to get the results that you're looking for. Another comment here, balancing empathy with business needs can be challenging. Absolutely. And this is where you need to have these very open conversations and open questions. Businesses are not charities. This is also where you can use other services such as employee assistance programs. If someone's got some really deep problems in their personal life, you can be there for them, but you can't always solve it for them. Some wonderful questions coming through today. I really appreciate these questions that are coming through. So let's get back to some of these really practical tips on how you can go about this. The first one in empathy, and this is going to sound counterproductive to some of you, is to avoid labeling someone else's emotion. Now, what does that mean? If someone presents to you and they seem angry, what we don't want to do is say, you seem angry right now. Because they may not be. Their reaction to that could be, oh, well, I wasn't angry. Should I be angry? And all of a sudden you're giving oxygen to an emotion that wasn't there. And you've misinterpreted that emotion at that point. So rather than labeling someone else's emotion, what we try to do is ask better questions. We ask questions through the use of what we call clean language. An example would be, something seems to have shifted in you just now. What was that? You see there, I'm not labeling, I'm not judging, I'm just showing concern, and I'm getting curious. So try to avoid labeling someone else's emotion, because you may get it wrong. They may not have been angry. They might have been frustrated. They might have been frustrated with themselves. So be careful not to label someone else's emotion. We also need to be careful not to invalidate someone else's emotions. This is a really powerful one. So a really classic trap to fall into here is the words, don't worry, or there's no need to worry about this. What are you worried about? You're invalidating someone else's emotion. This is another one that can go wrong in all kinds of ways. Saying someone, don't worry, they could interpret it in a few things. Similar to what I said about anger before, they might go, oh, I wasn't worried. Should I be worried? And all of a sudden they're worried when there was no worry there before. Or they might interpret it as condescending. They might think, oh, you're telling them that, don't you worry about this. The adults have got it. And that invalidates their emotion and it devalues them. It diminishes them. Or they might feel that you don't care, that they are worried, and you just telling them not to worry is not going to solve their problem. Now, this is where we come to our question before. Avoiding the temptation to always, is the key word here, always solve their problem. This is going to be the most difficult one for people that are truly empathetic, and you could be an empath out there that you don't like to see people suffer, but diving in to solve someone's problem isn't always the best course of action. So we need to think about what action is going to serve them best at this moment in time. If they're in deep trouble and they can't get themselves out of that trouble, yes, roll up your sleeves, get in there and help them solve the problem. If it's more a situation where they're going to learn and grow more from solving the problem themselves, we're going to go into a coach mode. We're going to be there for them. We're going to catch them if they fall, but we're going to ask them questions. What do you think you can do about this? What problems do you think you're going to encounter? Trying to draw out of them how they might solve their own problem, because sometimes you need to allow people to scrape their knees, because it's through mistakes and it's through failures that we learn the most. And our ability to build our resilience muscles by solving the problem ourselves is what gives us confidence the next time we encounter a similar problem. This is super hard. And I'm talking to leaders, I'm talking to parents. It's super hard to watch your child fail at something or struggle with something, but diving in there and solving it every time is not going to solve the problem. I'll give it to you straight on this one. Think about an example that we all go through: tying your shoelaces. If you tie your child's shoelaces every single time, the child never learns to tie their own shoelaces. So we need to avoid the thought that we dive in there every single time. We got some more questions coming through. It's really, really hard. It can be draining on your personal relationships because that cup is completely empty by the time you get home. This is a huge one as well. Moments in time. Moments in time. Sometimes you just need to give someone some space is the best answer. So what action is going to serve them well? It might be just give them some space where they need to go and just kind of breathe out and get a few things settled before they're ready to discuss something. That's one action. Always asking yourself this question: what action is going to serve them best? And I've got my favorite comment that I get every week, which is from my son, Thomas. Thank you. He watches the show. I think this is wonderful. And just saying hi, Dada, that warms my heart every week that he makes a comment like this. So let's get back to some real keys here. Stephen Covey, famous 7 habits, one of my favorites. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. This sums up empathy beautifully. Give someone a good, deep listening to. Make sure that they get everything off their chest. Get curious and ask them a few questions. Tell me more about that. Practice some active listening where you say, oh, I hear you saying you're frustrated. What's frustrating about this? So get curious, but don't label their emotions. Like I said before, let them label the emotion. Then you look to understand what makes this important to you. Another powerful question. So we get curious and we ask better questions. When someone is going through something, we give them a good damn listening to. And we ask better questions so that we can help them get to the bottom of it. That we look to embrace our cognitive empathy. What are they seeing? The emotional empathy. What are they feeling? And then the empathic concern to think about what action is going to serve them best. This is a classic one. I'm going to get a bit gender specific here because this is a generalization, and all generalizations are unfair, but some are useful, right? There's a bit of a gender situation here where men tend to be problem solvers and women tend to want to talk about problems and get things off their chest. But this could be woman to woman as well, or man to man. If a friend comes to you and they're having problems and they want to download, your tendency to dive in there and fix the problem for them may not be what they want. So another tip that I'll give you is, if you're in one of those situations with a friend that trusts you and comes to you for guidance, etc., at the start of the conversation, ask them this question: how would you like me to help you today? Do you want me to just listen, or do you want me to help solve the problem? And there's many times the person just wants you to listen to them and be there for them. And maybe ask a few questions. They want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to feel valued. They want to feel that they matter to you. They don't even always want you to solve the problem. So let's get out there. Let's lead with empathy. Let's embrace all of these things that we're talking about. Let's embrace the cognitive empathy to be able to see what someone else is seeing. Let's embrace the emotional empathy to understand what someone else is feeling. And let's use our empathic concern to always ask ourselves a question: what action is going to serve them best? That's it for this week's show. We look forward to bringing you more in this how-to series. We're really enjoying this series. We're getting great comments from you, the audience. Thank you so much for your support. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, regardless of whether you're watching here now on LinkedIn or on Facebook or on YouTube itself. Make sure that you do subscribe to the YouTube channel, because we bring the video podcasts every week. We bring these live stream videos every week, and currently we're in the middle of this how-to series. Next week, we'll be bringing you another one of these videos. In the meantime, do take care, look out for each other, and always remember to challenge the status quo.